New species are described all the time. In fact, somewhere in the neighborhood of 18,000 new species were described this year alone, with almost all of them receiving little to no media coverage. But there have been a few species that have made bigger waves than others. In this video, we're looking at 25 species of plant and animal that were scientifically described in 2024. For clarity, we are only looking at extant species, and I'm only including species that have been accepted as valid within the last 12 months. So let's take a look at some of the most interesting species from 2024. Sea squirts are sessile, filter-feeding invertebrates, and in 2021, a small species from just off the coast of Kumejima, Japan, sparked public interest when it appeared on a television program. The species is small, measuring only about 2 centimeters long, but it caught a videographer's eye because of its striking appearance. These sea squirts are mostly clear, but they appear to have a bright white backbone and rib cage. Even more interestingly, the dorsal end is mostly white and has a series of small black spots that make it look like a panda. Viewers were enamored with the sea squirt, but no one knew what species it was yet. It wasn't until February of this year that they were scientifically described as Clavelina ossipandae, commonly known as the skeleton panda sea squirt. Of course, they don't have a skeleton at all, and the white parts are actually part of their circulatory system. Researchers still aren't sure about the function of the black spots that give the species its cute appearance. In March, a new bee species was described. The species nests in insect burrows in dead wood and has a very specific diet. These bees only consume the nectar from flowers in the onosmaevae genus, which led to the scientific name chosen for them, Hoplitis onosmaevae. Because the plants they feed on have long flowers, the bees also have a longer than normal proboscis. Their preference for onosma flowers and their nesting habits also seriously limit their range. They can only be found in alpine, steppe-like habitats that are close enough to forests to provide them with appropriate nesting spaces. But the reason the bees made the news is where they're found. They are only known from 2 locations, southeast France and the mountains along the Turkey-Iraq border, 2 habitats that are over 3,000 kilometers apart. How a species with such specific habitat requirements has managed to spread to 2 alpine locations so far away from each other remains a mystery. The Chromis genus of fish was only known to occur in shallow reefs until a new species was described in November that broke the mold. Researchers working alongside Rolex's Perpetual Planet Initiative were exploring the little-known deep reefs close to the twilight zone around the Maldives when they came across a species of Chromis they didn't expect to find. The species is a pale, slate blue, with its most defining feature being a large black spot that covers the majority of its anal fin. It was given the epithet abadhah, which means perpetual in the local Divehi language, and perpetual was chosen in honor of the initiative that led researchers to discover it. Much more research needs to be done on these mesophotic ecosystems, as they contain a wealth of undescribed species, and little is known about the threats that they face. In May, a species of plant was described that has a particularly unusual feature: star-shaped hairs. Virectaria stellata is a new member of the coffee family that was described from the West African nation of Guinea. The reason these star-shaped hairs are so unique isn't because of their shape, but because none of the other 14,000 known species of coffee plant has hairs like these. So how did they come to have this unique feature? The researchers that describe the species believe that this is a case of horizontal gene transfer from a species of acanthus plant that lives in the same region. This means that genes responsible for creating this type of hair structure in the acanthus plant at some point managed to pass over to Virectaria stellata. While horizontal gene transfer is common among single-celled organisms, it is a very rare occurrence in multi-celled organisms like plants and animals, making this new species stand out among other plant discoveries this year. In the mountains of Mexico and Guatemala live several species of arboreal alligator lizard. These lizards are known for their habit of mostly living in trees and their strong association to bromeliads. In 2014, pictures of a distinctive species of arboreal alligator lizard surfaced. They had been taken around the town of Coapilla in the northern part of Chiapas state. When researchers saw the photos, they set out in search of the species. In January of 2024, it was finally described, based on the fact that it has different scale patterns and coloration than other known species of arboreal alligator lizard. It was described as Abronia cunemica, after the indigenous Zoque name for the area it was found in, Cunemo. This is the only place where the species is known to occur, and it's considered to be seriously threatened with extinction, as none of its habitat is protected and the area has high rates of deforestation. In the city of Bengaluru in southern India, researchers were performing a routine biological survey within the city limits when they stumbled on a frog that they couldn't identify. It was a species of burrowing frog that seemed to emerge with the start of the rainy season, but no other similar species was known from the area. After performing genetic research, the description of the new species was published in January of 2024. Its common name is the Varshaabhu burrowing frog, and it was assigned the epithet Varshaabhu. In Sanskrit, Varsha means rain, and Bhu means birth, so its scientific name is in reference to its emergence and breeding activities during the rainy season. The fact that it was found living in urban and suburban environments around Bengaluru was particularly significant to one of the researchers, P. Deepak, who worked to describe the species. This discovery challenges our preconceptions about where new species can be found, according to Deepak. The fact that such a unique frog has been living right under our noses in the heart of Bengaluru city is truly remarkable. A few years ago, as some researchers combed through shark museum specimens, they noticed a few individuals that were significantly different from the other known sharks. These meter-long fish had an external layer of skin covered in denticles, which made them look like they were covered in bristles. They also had a unique eye shape, dorsal fin structure, reproductive organs, and egg case morphology. Later, as researchers explored more of the deep sea off the coast of New Zealand, they managed to document the sharks in the wild for the first time. It turned out that they are not just a new species or even a new genus, but that they represent an entirely new family of shark. They're only known to occur between 500 and 1500 meters in depth, where they're likely apex predators of the deep, though much more research needs to be done. In March, they were described as Dichichthys satoi and given the common name of Roughback bristle shark. In June, a new species of deciduous shrub was described that is closely related to the popularly kept zebra plant. Aphelandra almanegra is found in the dry tropical forests of northwest Colombia, and while it lacks the impressive leaves of its cousin the zebra plant, It more than makes up for this with the beauty of its flowers. The species has tall spikes that can be covered in as many as 110 pink flowers each. Interestingly, when cut open, the heart of the stem is black. This led to researchers calling the species the black-souled Aphelandra, and in fact, the species epithet, almanegra, means black soul in Spanish. They're considered a good candidate as a houseplant should cultivation eventually take place, but in the wild, the species is listed as endangered, as its habitat is being cleared at an alarming rate. Sometimes, a new species makes the news simply because it appears to have an attitude. Divers off the coast of Saudi Arabia first noticed this tiny fish back in 2023. It took several more dives to realize that it was in fact a unique species. The grumpy Dwarfgoby was described in September and is only known from the Red Sea in shallow waters along the Saudi Arabian coast. It made news because of its permafrown, which makes it appear as though it's in a bad mood at all times. Being a Dwarfgoby, it's really small, measuring less than 2 centimeters in length. It inhabits holes and crevices in coral reef walls and overhangs, where it patiently waits for small crustaceans to pass by so it can lunge out and catch them with their large teeth. Its bright red color helps it to perfectly blend into its surroundings. This camouflage, along with the species' apparent rarity, contribute to why they have gone undetected until now. This is my personal favorite species discovered this year. In March, researchers in the Western Ghats region of southern India published their findings of 2 new species of dwarf gecko, one of which is Cnemaspis vangoghi, commonly referred to as the starry night gecko, and it might be one of the most beautiful species of lizard in the world. The males of the species have a remarkable blue and orange coloration, with light blue spots and stripes. This reminded the researchers of Vincent van Gogh's famous painting, Starry Night, leading them to name the species after the artist. This gecko is only known to live in pine forests at low elevations on the eastern slopes of the Western Ghats, and it's one of 5 endemic species of vertebrate to the Srivilliputur Meghamalai Tiger Reserve, the only place it is known to occur. In 2021, on the island of Timor in eastern Indonesia, a 14-year-old boy was walking through the forest with his father when he stumbled on a huge stick insect that he hadn't seen before. He reached out to Indonesian entomologist Garda Bagus Tamastra, who, along with a team of other researchers, discovered that this was in fact a new species of phasmid. The phasmids of the eastern islands of Indonesia are seriously understudied, and this is only the 2nd species of distinct phasmid known from the island. The species is surprisingly large, with females having a total body length of up to 35 centimeters. It's believed that if a species of insect this large has managed to go undescribed until now, there are likely many more species of insect awaiting discovery in the region. In July, a new species of crab was described from the South China Sea. Being only about a centimeter in diameter and being mostly cream and brown in coloration, its appearance wasn't what made the discovery remarkable. Instead, it was the naming of the species that made it stand out. It was given the epithet Gothus teemo. The genus Gothus is in reference to a Chinese board game known as Go, which has been around for about the past 2,500 years. The specific name, Teemo, is explained by the researchers in the journal that they published. The new species is named after Teemo, a character from the multiplayer online battle arena video game League of Legends. This character, modeled after a raccoon, has a fluffy, diminutive stature with a brown and white intermingled fur coat. This alludes to the new species' small size, densely covered short setae, and brown striped coloration. In the forests of Malaysia, a new species of parasitic plant was described this year in May. Thismia malayana is an incredible species. This tiny flowering plant is found in a place most other plants are unable to survive, on the forest floor of the darkest parts of the jungle. The dense canopy of tall trees and jungles often blocks out most of the sunlight from reaching the forest floor. Without sufficient light, many plants cannot photosynthesize effectively, and thus cannot grow. But Thismia malayana has found a way around this. It doesn't photosynthesize at all, instead stealing nutrients from the fungus it grows on. As such, it lacks leaves and the green coloration typical of most plants. The species essentially consists of roots, floral tubes, and flowers. It is only known from 2 national parks in Malaysia and is therefore considered vulnerable to extinction. The oncia, also known as the tiger cat, was once considered to be a single species that spread from Costa Rica in the north to Argentina in the south. These small cats are about the size of a house cat, and they live both in high-elevation cloud forests and lowland tropical forests. In 2013, researchers took a closer look at the species and realized that it was not 1, but 2. Oncias were divided into the northern tiger cat and the southern tiger cat. But more recent research into this complicated species complex discovered that there is a third tiger cat that is deserving of species status. The clouded tiger cat was described in January of 2024, based on genetic differences as well as differences in morphology and ecology. The new species has a slightly darker coloration, with more orange around the head, striping on the shoulders, thicker fur, and only 1 pair of teats. So now, the 3 species are the savanna tiger cat, which lives in central and northeastern Brazil, the Atlantic forest tiger cat, which is found in southeastern Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina, and the new clouded tiger cat, which encompasses the cats found in Central America and the Andes Mountains. In 2021, a new genus of pygmy pipe horses was described from New Zealand, with the only known existing species being the Manaya pygmy pipe horse. The genus was named Silix, which means cup, because of the unique coronet feature on its head. In September of 2024, a second species was added to the genus, Silix nkosi, also known as the Sodwana pygmy pipe horse. Amazingly, it was found over 11,000 kilometers away, off the coast of South Africa. This new species of pygmy pipe horse has a distinct diamond-shaped bony protuberance that differentiates it from the other known species from New Zealand. This crown-like projection led to it being given the epithet Nkosi, which means chief in the local Zulu language. The species' body coloration is highly variable, appearing orange, brown, or red. Central and South America are home to some of the most toxic species of frog in the world. Poison dart frogs advertise their toxicity using bright colors. One such species from Colombia is Phyllobates arautenia. This species of poison dart frog was once believed to have several colorations, from green or yellow to orange or red. But recent genetic research has revealed that the orange-red form is in fact a separate species. The new species was described in September as Phyllobates samperi and is distinguished by its overall bluish-black body, orange or red stripes, and lack of blue-silver marbling on the legs. This species is only known to live in lowland forests around the city of Buenaventura on the west coast, and is considered vulnerable due to ongoing deforestation and gold mining within its limited range. The largest of the over 360 species of hummingbird is the giant hummingbird. Found from southern Colombia down the Andes Mountains to Chile and Argentina, this species is less colorful than many other species of hummingbird, but also much larger, being about the same size as a European starling or a northern cardinal. The species was described in 1840, and it was quickly noted that there seemed to be two distinct subspecies. Then, something else was noticed. The giant hummingbirds in the southernmost part of their range were only present in the warmest months of the year. Meanwhile, the giant hummingbirds closer to the equator were present all year round. A team of scientists began to track the species and discovered that the southern population is in fact migratory, while the northern population is not. Genetic testing was performed, and it has been confirmed that the two populations are two separate species, having split from each other over 3 million years ago. The migratory southern giant hummingbird maintains the original scientific name, while the northern giant hummingbird was given full species status and described as Paragona peruviana. A researcher from the University of Queensland was on a camping trip on the Gold Coast of Australia when something caught his eye. At first, he thought there was a bird dropping on a plant that he was passing by, but then he realized that it was actually a very strange species of longhorn beetle. It was small, measuring only about a centimeter long, but it stood out for its coloration. It was covered in long white hairs on every part of its body, and under all the white were striking black and red markings. Realizing that he had found something unique, it was photographed and collected. When pictures of the beetle were shared with entomologists through online forums, no one could identify it. It was then compared to thousands of known longhorn beetle species, and none were a match. Finally, in March of 2024, it was announced as a new species. And not only that, it also represents a whole new genus of longhorn beetle. Despite attempts to find more, no other specimen of the species has yet to be found. The nightjars of the Caprimulgus macrurus species complex are very similar to each other. They range from Pakistan to Australia, and the 6 known species are mostly distinguished from one another by their unique calls. But recently, the nightjars of the lesser Sunda Islands of Timor and Wetar were noted to have a call unlike any of the others. In fact, they differed in 13 vocal characters from all of the other species. Further study concluded that the birds were morphologically and genetically distinct as well, and in June, the Timor nightjar was described as a new species. Thankfully, one of the islands that the birds live on, Wetar, still has about 95% of its forest habitat intact, but more research needs to be done to determine the conservation status of this brand new species of nightjar. About 450 kilometers southwest of the southern tip of Baja California Sur lies a small group of islands known as the Revillagigedo Archipelago. The coral reefs around these islands are home to a species of wrasse that was scientifically described at the end of February. The tail spot wrasse is part of a species complex, and it shares 97% of its DNA with its closest relative, the red stripe wrasse. In the juvenile phase, the two species are quite similar, but the tail spot wrasse has a yellow-rimmed black spot on the dorsal fin, with males also having a black spot on the caudal fin. When they mature, their coloration changes, and in the terminal phase, they look quite distinct from other wrasses in the species complex, being vermilion to orangish-brown with dark scale outlines, a white patch on their upper abdomen, and a prominent black band on the base of the caudal fin. It was described as Helicoeres sanchezi in honor of Professor Carlos Armando Sanchez Ortiz, a respected Mexican conservationist. Most of us are familiar with hammerhead sharks, but what many don't realize is that at the beginning of 2024, there were 9 known species of hammerhead that ranged from oceans around the world. One of the 9 known species is the bonnethead. It reaches lengths of about 1.5 meters and is found in warm waters from the United States and Mexico down to Peru and Brazil. It occurs in coastal waters on both sides of the Americas, but researchers noticed that some of what they believed to be bonnetheads in the southern part of the Atlantic side were slightly different. Their heads had a more shovel-like appearance. When analysis of the vertebrae and teeth was done, it was discovered that these mystery sharks have about 10 more vertebrae than the bonnetheads do. Genetic analysis confirmed that it was in fact a new species, and the shovelbill shark was described as Sphaerotheca alleni, after Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, whose foundation funded the research. A new species of ant was described this year that researchers are hoping will shine a light on the existence of subterranean species. In the northern part of Western Australia, researchers decided to study subterranean species by examining mining exploration drill holes. These holes are 25 meters deep, and any species of animal found in them would live protected from the scorching hot summers of the grasslands above. So they lowered nets down into the holes and then brought them back up, dragging them along the sides to catch any animals that might be found there. They managed to pull up 2 female worker specimens of a strange new ant species. The ants are long and thin, being a ghostly cream color and having elongated mandibles and antennae. Because they spend their entire lives deep underground, they have no eyes at all, which contributes to their creepy appearance. The species was named Liptonilla Voldemort, after the villain from the Harry Potter series, as he too is slender, pale, and thrives in the darkness. There exists a secretive genus of snakes from the Middle East known as kukri snakes. There are 5 known species, but their distribution has puzzled researchers for quite some time. Most species of a genus have ranges that connect, explaining how they spread across large areas over time. But the kukri snakes were missing from a huge area between species. Dayan's kukri snake lives in southern Israel, but then another species known as the Aden kukri snake is found way down on the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen and Oman. Between these 2 species, no other species from the genus was known, and how the Aden kukri snakes spread down there was a mystery. But in May, a new species of kukri snake was described from Saudi Arabia, filling in the gap in the range of the genus. Rhynchocalamus hejazincus is a beautiful snake with 2 color morphs. The more common coloration is coral overall, with black markings on the face and neck that have been described as looking like a tiny ski mask. There is also a melanistic morph. Because of their wide distribution from Jordan in the north down through much of Saudi Arabia, the species isn't considered threatened. It's rare that new species of large animals are discovered, but this year, the first new species of deer in the 21st century and the first new species of deer in the New World in over 60 years was described. Scientists already knew about the short-legged dwarf deer known as the pudu. The genus has long been divided into two species: the northern pudu, found in the Andes of Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, and the southern pudu from Chile and Argentina. But this year, it was discovered that the northern pudu is in fact two separate species. In Peru, there is a depression in the Andes called the Huancabamba Depression. The mountains dip down to just below 2,000 meters at their lowest point here. The northern pudu prefers to live above 2,000 meters, and as it turns out, they haven't crossed this depression in a long time. Long enough that genetic testing has revealed that the pudu on either side have actually developed into two separate species. The one south of the depression was described as new and is now called the Peruvian Yungas pudu. It is only found in the highlands of Peru. This is perhaps the most controversial new species on the list. Orca taxonomy is extremely complicated, and many researchers have proposed dividing orcas into various species or subspecies over the years. Currently, in the coastal waters of the North Pacific, orcas are divided into two groups: transient killer whales, which roam up and down the coast searching for marine mammals to hunt, and resident killer whales, which tend to stick to predictable areas in order to hunt fish. This year, researchers have done a lot of work to prove that the resident and transient orcas of the Eastern Pacific are in fact two separate species. There are several key reasons why. First, they are morphologically distinct, not just in patterning, coloration, and fin shape, but also down to the skeletal level. Second, they have different types of vocalization, with resident killer whales being highly vocal with a wide repertoire of sounds, and transient killer whales being much quieter and limited in their repertoire, likely because they need to remain undetected as they hunt. Third, they have totally different cultures: what they eat, how they relate to one another, and where they spend their time. These cultural differences mean that the two groups never interbreed. Genetic testing has shown that the two groups should probably be separated into two distinct species, with the resident killer whales being reclassified as Orcinus ater, meaning black, and the transient killer whales being reclassified as Orcinus rectipinus, meaning upright fin. In the end, the Society for Marine Mammalogy rejected the reclassification, but not because they didn't agree. They just felt that if orcas are going to be taxonomically redefined, we need to reassess global populations and reclassify them all at the same time, as the orcas in the rest of the world's oceans show evidence that they should probably gain species status as well. And that's it for today's video. Which of these species did you find the most interesting? Let me know in the comments below. I want to say a special thanks to my patrons. Without their ongoing support, I wouldn't be able to produce a video like this every week. If you want to join us on Patreon, check out the link in the video description below. Thanks for watching, have a happy new year, and I'll see you next time.